Day and confirm the commitment of the Green Party of Canada to all the recommendations and the calls for action that apply to the federal government in the TRC, confirm our commitment to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, confirm our commitment to the findings and implementation of those recommendations from the inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and further that we have amended our budget already, as in what was released last week, includes the $2 billion that was found to be owing Indigenous children by the Human Rights Tribunal in its recent finding. So a shout out again to Cindy Blackstock and all the wonderful people who are working for equal rights and equal services for health and education to Indigenous children. Je veux dire en français seulement que c'est aujourd'hui la journée de chemise l'orange. C'est l'histoire très triste de l'expérience dans les écoles résidentielles et particulièrement pour la petite fille qui a écrit le livre au sujet de son chemise orange qui était enlevée dans sa première journée à l'école. So it's a particularly sad day for recognition of what's happened in the residential schools across Canada. Mais aujourd'hui, nous avons une annonce très importante au sujet d'un autre mouvement des enfants, les mouvements de grève à l'école pour le climat. We know that our children were marching across Canada on Friday. Unlike other parties, we've done our homework. We actually have a complete research analysis that supports what we released last May, which is Mission Possible. How do we reduce greenhouse gases by 60% below 2005 levels by 2030? This target, the Green Party target, is double the target that Justin Trudeau still calls the Paris target. It's not the Paris target, it's Stephen Harper's target. It was put in place in May 2015, 6 months before we negotiated in Paris. Canada, Justin Trudeau, Catherine McKenna deserve credit that in Paris we were the first industrialized country to say that the text of the treaty should say that our goal is to hold to 1.5 degrees Celsius. That was their last moment of climate leadership. Because what's needed, if you accept that we need to ensure that global average temperature doesn't go above 1.5 degrees Celsius, you cannot keep clinging to a target that takes you to double that. You need to revise the target downward dramatically. So the climate march has caused other parties to start rushing to trying to take parts of our platform. That's great. The most important part of our platform to take, memo to Jagmeet saying it's not enough to pledge $30 million for ferries. Our plan already includes $100 million for ferries to electrify them and make them more accessible, cheaper, and available to Canadians on all our coasts and internal areas where we use ferries. It's part of a national transportation system that needs to move to zero carbon. Newsflash to Justin Trudeau, we love the announcement of 2 billion trees being planted. People missed it. It's already in Mission Possible that we need tree planting. But we measure in thousands of hectares, not individual trees. And when you take Mission Possible's plan for 30,000 hectares of tree replanting every year for the next 30 years, it's more than 1 trillion trees. We're not playing we'll see you and raise you. We're just saying it's already in Mission Possible what needs to be done, not what makes a nice announcement with a number with lots of zeros after it. We're looking at what we must do to ensure we're sequestering carbon, and the 30,000 hectares replanted every single year, in our view, are primarily in those areas that have been burnt over. No one is replanting our forests in the areas that have been burnt over, at least not close to adequately. So we need to get the standing fuel out of the woods. We need to protect communities from forest fires. We need fire breaks. We need tree planting. All of these things are doable. And having mentioned Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet saying it wouldn't be fair if I didn't mention Mr. Scheer's contribution to the debate on Friday. I don't know if these are wonderful candidates behind me. They may not have heard this before, so prepare for grimaces. Andrew Scheer's suggestion was by widening roads, cars could move faster, and faster moving cars pollute less than cars stuck in traffic. Well, no need to comment further on Andrew Scheer's plan. We know as Greens what needs to be done. It's not about politics, it's about science. The science is clear. We have to reduce by 60% below our 2005 levels and get there by 2030. The deep detail here, which was prepared by Green Party candidates across the country who are in our shadow cabinet climate caucus, to say that John Kidder here to my left, who is the finance critic on the Green Party shadow cabinet, took the lion's share of crunching the numbers and going back to original sources and consulting with experts to make sure that the graphs and charts you see in front of you, which are also on our website at the Green Party of Canada, you can look at one page after another and see, okay, this is how fast we're bringing down our dependence on oil. This is how fast we bring down dependence on liquefied natural gas. We ban fracking immediately. We ban new pipelines immediately, but our dependence on various sources cranks down as our access to renewable sources starts cranking up. And sorry about yeah. So we're available for questions from any of the media. Je suis disponible pour les questions. Pour moi-même, on doit quitter très vite pour un vol à Toronto. Mais les autres, et particulièrement John Kidder, peuvent rester ici pour répondre à les questions sur les détails. This is, again, the ramping up of our renewable sector. So we've crunched the numbers. We've looked at each one of these elements. Je suis tellement fière de le devoir du Parti vert du Canada pour montrer que c'est vraiment que mission possible reste possible. Ce n'est pas facile. Our goals, our plans in Mission Possible are possible. They are definitely not easy. If anyone was listening to Cross Country Checkup yesterday, you heard the various experts say, and you'll keep hearing them say, the Green Party plan is awfully ambitious. Yeah, it is. It's also necessary. Anyone who thinks we can't be ambitious and we can wash our hands of responding to the direct challenge of our children, you're stealing our future. We are. We can stop stealing their future. We can guarantee their future. But we can't do it with the current mindset, status quo decision-making, and politics as usual. We have to abandon all that to work together and say, let's form an inner cabinet of all parties. Regardless of how this election turns out, let's make that commitment now, that whoever forms government has an inner cabinet with a commitment to holding to 1.5 degrees Celsius, just as we would do in wartime, just as Mackenzie King did in the Second World War and Winston Churchill did, to say these decisions are far too important for politics. So just as war is too important to be left to the generals, saving our children's future cannot be left to typical partisan politics and status quo decision making. The free market can help, but it won't save us. And the failure to take on our responsibilities as grown-ups, as political party leaders, as leaders at provincial, municipal, and Indigenous governance right across this country, every single aspect of our society is called to step up and do what is humanly possible from wherever we are, for wherever we sit. We have to stand up and heed the call of our children. Right now, it's all hands on deck to deliver what the scientific community warns us is essential. Je suis vraiment engagée, je suis vraiment fière avec notre plan Mission Possible, avec tous les devoirs qui montrent les preuves qui étaient possibles. Mais je suis absolument certaine, c'est pas facile. Maintenant, c'est le moment de rester debout pour protéger l'avenir pour nos enfants et petits-enfants. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has here. I want to thank all the candidates who've joined us this morning. Does anyone have a question, any journalists in the room with questions? Yes, Natalie from Bloomberg.
What would your message be to those in the business community who tend to have this sort of knee-jerk reaction of apprehension about the role that the Green Party may have in a minority government?
Well, to the business community, of course, the business community is full of brilliant people who are entrepreneurs. I meet informally with many business leaders, particularly those who are looking at, as Wayne Gretzky famously said, we want to skate to where the puck is going. People who are skating to where the puck is going aren't seen anywhere near the oil sands. Skating where the puck is going is green tech, clean tech, new technologies, what's going on with various parts of our economy that are now growing. The disruptive technologies are being suppressed by a government that's fully infiltrated by big oil. So continuing to subsidize fossil fuels when we're on the brink of the biggest economic transformation since the Model T Ford replaced the horse and buggy. I mean, if our governments today had been around then, we'd be subsidizing horse whips and buggies and doing everything we could to stop the advance of progress. We really do need to get out of the way because the business community has good business ideas. A lot of the biggest transnationals globally have left the oil sands. ConocoPhillips, Statoil, Total SA, and Royal Dutch Shell, they left the oil sands because they don't want stranded carbon. They're not fools. They don't want unburnable carbon. And the quote-unquote around unburnable carbon belongs to Mark Carney. People around the world know that we're going off fossil fuels. And it's sort of like a game of musical chairs. Nobody wants to be left sitting on the oil sands chair when everybody else is out of the room. You do not have safe investments then. The value of your enterprise is massively devalued when the carbon bubble bursts, and you will have failed in your duty to your shareholders. Everyone needs to divest from fossil fuel investments, including our pension plans, including the Government of Canada, including universities. Divesting from fossil fuels is where the smart money is going to go. So we need the big oil companies, as they often have said in the past, to reimagine themselves as energy companies. And we all know that Royal Dutch Shell has a big division looking at solar and a big division looking at hydrogen. Renewable energy is our future. Going off fossil fuels is our future. So how do we as Canadians make sure that the communities that are fossil fuel dependent, the workers that are in that sector, have the time to be assured that they're not left behind? Now, I know Jason Kenney wants to inflame the rhetoric on this, but we need to work together to make sure that people who are currently in the coal sector know, and by the way, we've got $400 million in our current budget as recommended by the commission that looked at just transition for coal sector workers. We're the only party that has accepted those recommendations and budgeted for it. We're serious about listening to the workers, talking to communities, making sure that this transition for workers, let's face it, in the fossil fuel sector, most workers by far are skilled, and their skills are transferable. We need every single worker and more because the requirements of Mission Possible for a workforce exceed our current workforce, exceed our current population. So we want to assure every worker there's a space in a job that is with the skills with which they are familiar, that they have developed, and instead of producing fossil fuels, they're producing renewables. But they're still in the energy sector, and it's going to be profitable. There's also work to be done in cleaning up the oil sands. I mentioned in an earlier speech in this room, the new toxic waste site that eclipses all others is the oil sands and the tailings ponds. And the liabilities are with the companies that created that mess. But if history is any guide, taxpayers will be left with that mess. But let's get the companies, while they're still operating, to start cleaning up the mess and rehabilitating the areas that have had ecological destruction in producing bitumen. They made the promise to clean it up, but we know that the funds that have been set aside are woefully inadequate.
Bonjour, Kim Vernet de Radio-Canada. Vous avez parlé de votre volonté de réunir les partis pour travailler ensemble. Vous l'avez mentionné en anglais, mais j'aimerais peut-être vous entendre en français là-dessus. C'est pas la première fois d'ailleurs que vous en parlez.
Oui, c'est dans notre plan Mission Possible, c'est un des premières étapes. C'est pour mettre sur pied un système tout à fait différent dans le gouvernement du Canada pour une grande collaboration entre les partis. Nous avons dit de l'histoire de la Deuxième Guerre mondiale où Mackenzie King, notre Premier ministre, et Winston Churchill ont utilisé un cabinet interne avec tous les partis de l'opposition, tout ensemble, parce qu'on doit avoir un consensus pour éviter le moment après la prochaine élection où s'il y a une menace d'un autre parti qui prend le pouvoir et dit maintenant nous pouvons annuler tous les plans des autres partis. Nous avons eu déjà cette expérience quand Stephen Harper est devenu Premier ministre dans le Parlement minoritaire. Il a annulé tous les plans des libéraux dans le gouvernement de Paul Martin. Le plan de Kyoto de Paul Martin était vraiment excellent. Tout le monde a oublié ce plan, mais M. Harper l'a annulé sans vote dans le Parlement. C'est quelque chose qu'il a fait dans son propre cabinet. Alors, pour éviter un grand changement des politiques comme ça, on doit mettre sur pied ce Parlement et un cabinet comme un cabinet de guerre, mais c'est un cabinet de climat. Avec moi, M. Trudeau, M. Scheer, M. Singh, M. Blanchet, tout le monde dans une approche absolument non partisane pour protéger l'avenir, protéger l'économie du Canada et prendre les décisions qui sont nécessaires ensemble. Merci. I have to go to the airport. I don't want to leave without giving... John, do you want to add some things while I gather things up, or just checking? Team here, wonderful candidates.
I'm just happy to answer any questions on the detail if anybody wants to get into this report and ask specifically how it is we're going to get there. I do want to say just one thing in clarification. When we tried to run these numbers, we tried to find every way we could to meet a 60% reduction in CO2 emissions by 2030. The inescapable conclusion, there is no doubt about this, that to meet the requirements of the science, we have to stop production of bitumen, we have to stop production of fracked natural gas by 2030. That means we cease any further expansion of that as of right now, and we ramp it down rapidly. To meet the demand for energy, we have to ramp up renewables quite rapidly. All the details in this plan, there's not so much a plan as it is a scenario, and we invite collaboration with other parties. Everybody's got good ideas about this. We're certainly not the only ones. This is one possible way to get there. What we know is that, as Elizabeth says, the science tells us unequivocally that we have to get there. This is not an objective that's dictated by politics. It's dictated by physics, by the atmosphere, by the way the world works. We can't change that. So working with other parties, we want to find other ways to move ahead to get to these objectives, but it is absolutely clear we cannot do this and continue to produce bitumen and continue to produce fracked natural gas. There is no way around that, so let's start now to ramp those things down as quickly as we can, and let's get on the program of building renewables as fast as we can. Happy to take any detailed questions on any of this. Thank you.
And with that, are there any other questions as I slip away? OK. Merci mille fois tout le monde. Le groupe ici reste disponible pour les questions, l'entrevue. I'm so proud of this green team. I know Jesse Brown from Vancouver Centre isn't on stage with us. Not quite sure why not. But we got Brennan, we got Jeff, we got Beverly Pixie Hobby, who's such a smart environmental lawyer. I'm so proud you're running for us. And Suzanne and Julie and Bridget Burns from East Van and Françoise from Richmond. And who am I forgetting? Oh, Suzanne from Burnaby. I said you already. Okay, thanks everybody and George Orr from North Van. We've got a great team running, and I'm hoping to see all of you in Ottawa. You don't get any time off after the election. Work is going to start right away, just so you know. Thanks a million.
Y a-t-il des autres questions? Non? Non. Merci.
So thank you so much. Okay, so I just gotta get my. They're hiding my suitcase somewhere. Okay, can I?